Good afternoon or morning, everyone. Welcome to the third in our Google Creative Sandbox Gallery Hangout series. Today we're going to be talking about some really astounding uses of DoubleClick technology. And to kick it off this afternoon here in New York, I'm actually going to hand it over to my colleague Ryan out on the West Coast, who works with DoubleClick. He's going to talk a little bit about the platform. We're going to run a quick video that gives you some idea of what can be done with it. And then we're going to be speaking with Grow and with Spinnaker about their fantastic uses of this technology. Ryan?
Cool, just in time. Sorry guys, had a quick venue switch. So everyone obviously on the Hangout here is familiar with DoubleClick Rich Media, right? Because the creative agencies here leverage the tool. To give you some background, I'm Ryan Tetzel and I work on obviously the DoubleClick end of Google. My team works with creative agencies across the US, right? So we really sort of want you guys to understand the capabilities of DoubleClick Rich Media and overall the DoubleClick platform as a whole. So I think the best way, I think we have a video queued up where we can give you guys a quick sort of 90-second sizzle of what DoubleClick Rich Media is all about. Cool. Are we back on?
Back on.
Awesome. So that obviously was a number of Rich Media examples we just sort of ran through. I think, that video highlights some of the big in your face sort of takeover Rich Media units that you might see, browsing the web. Working specifically, I'm based in Los Angeles, and a lot of the entertainment clients here in LA, the Hollywood studios, have the budgets and have the luxury of media placements like a YouTube masthead to be able to create these sort of crazy page takeovers, right? And I think at the end, the second half of this, you'll see what the Spinnaker team did, taking a James Bond film, right, and creating a really engaging YouTube masthead with that. But not all advertisers or brands have the the luxury of a canvas that size or the media plan that includes, let's say, a media placement like a masthead. So let's say you're just given a 300 by 250 and you have a CPG brand to execute with. At that point, you've got to start figuring out the best way to get users to engage with the Rich Media unit when you don't have that type of a placement. And I think what Drew and the Grow team did, taking a brand like Alka-Seltzer, was really taking the power of DoubleClick's technology platform and all the data signals that we can tap into, and really creating a relevant, engaging, rich experience. And I think with that, I'll pass it over to Brian and Drew, and we'll sort of walk through that first example.
Great. And so the beauty of having Ryan on the call here is twofold. One, the agencies that are on the call today and going to be talking about their work, you're welcome to grill him, yell at him, anything you like as far as the product goes, demand things. And for those of you that are watching live, both with the agencies that have done this incredible work, as well as having Ryan here, please feel free to pop in on our moderator tool, which we'll be putting the link up throughout the course of the Hangout, and ask any questions you like of the folks in the agency, Ryan. It's a great place to get your questions answered. So with that, Drew, are you on the line there?
I'm here, yeah.
Excellent. So let's go over. So Drew, do you want to talk about, introduce yourself, your position within the company, and talk a little bit about the work? And then we'll go ahead and run the video.
Cool. I'm Drew Ongvarsky, the owner and creative director at Grow. We're a digital agency and production studio working both directly with brands and with advertising agencies as a production shop. We partnered with Google on Project Rebrief last year, and Alka-Seltzer is one of 4 brands where we essentially tried to reimagine classic advertising as if it was done today, and if it was done today, what are the tools that you could have used to do that in a much more engaging and relevant way.
Great. So let's go ahead and run a video of the work, and then we'll jump back in.
In Project Rebrief, we reimagined Alka-Seltzer's iconic "I can't believe I ate the whole thing" by bringing back the original ad's character Ralph through personalized videos and immersive experiences about the day Ralph ate the whole thing. Each experience is customized to its viewer, as story elements change with cues such as location, time, weather, and the context of website, making Ralph more relevant than ever before. The ad experience begins with a classic opening montage, in which scenes and elements are customized to make it relevant to the viewer's environment. For example, users in New York would see Ralph driving through Times Square, while those viewing it in Chicago would find familiar elements of the Windy City. As the viewer's weather changes, so does the weather in the story. Story elements can also change based on the user's interests. So when Ralph receives a package from his postman during the afternoon episode, contents of his packet adjust accordingly.
It's a mail or a chess set.
When the ad is placed on YouTube, Ralph's TV plays the same video, and he reacts based on the video's category. Each episode gives the users an option to influence the story directly by interacting with Ralph. When Ralph and Fred disagree about the radio station, a viewer can step in to help pick a song, leading to a variety of outcomes. They can even call the lead character and interact with him during the dinner episode. Each story leads up to Ralph eating the whole thing.
Okay, so that is a very complicated piece of creative with a lot of moving pieces. So we'll get into the technology and how you actually put it together in just a moment. But just to kick off the conversation, let's talk about the idea process first. So you've got this this square of real estate and the things that you can do within it. What is the idea generation process like for you guys at Grow? How did you approach this project? How did you come up with all of these different moving pieces and the way that they all came together?
Sure, yeah. Well, keep in mind, we kind of had the luxury of this being a twofold process. Yes, one, we were doing this ad, we're reimagining this ad. We're also creating an experiment about the process. And so in a lot of ways, we were analyzing what it is we were doing. How do you actually create this stuff? How could we get in a room with legends of advertising and teach them to do the same thing? So the process for us was understand all of the tools in the toolbox, try to get some understanding of what are the different platforms. Why is it a relevant tool? Why is it not just as it's often treated a print ad resized, but that we can do the things that the Google platform allows us to do, serving ads to people. When you say at the right time and the right place for the right person, what does that mean, and how can that be a really effective tool, not just for sales and engagement, but even for entertainment in the case of Alka-Seltzer?
Great. So basically just rethinking the entire concept of what that ad unit could be. So you mentioned what are all the tools in the toolbox, and I think that's something that comes up with agencies and with clients, and even sometimes here internally at Google. There's just so much you can play with. How did you guys figure out what are all the tools? How did you just stockpile all that list, and then how did you select amongst the things that you had to say these are the 6 things we want to play with?
Sure.
Or can?
I'll be honest and say early on in the process, a lot of the stuff wasn't very well documented, and so we had a tough time getting through it. Since then, we know, even through the end of the campaign and some stuff that we're doing now, lots of the tools, specifically how the GDN works, how a YouTube buy works, and what features are available to you. Some of the different tools, certainly across platforms, are very well documented and even sort of nicely packaged into the right pages and videos and so forth to learn those things. In our case, we wanted to, again, kind of survey those technologies. We were looking for ways we could use them in places that they hadn't yet been used. And we identified a list of about 20 things that we thought, sort of from a creative and technology standpoint, would be really amazing if we could highlight.
Right.
And then as we looked at each brand, Alka-Seltzer in particular, we would say, okay, what is that brief all about? If that brief is all about, in the case of Alka-Seltzer, is relevancy. It was everyone could relate to Ralph sitting on the side of his bed. And so what are the tools that are available to us that really allow us to showcase relevancy? And so you could look at that across other brands like Coke, and Buy the World of Coke, where you say, well, that's a social experiment, that's a social brand, let's look at social tools and so forth. So picking the tools based on that.
Great. And let me ask you a question. Did you pick out the technologies you guys thought were relevant and then develop the idea around that technology, which sounds like maybe that's what you did, but I may be misreading that? Or did you say, these are the stories we want to tell, and now I need to find excuse me, the correct technology that will actually make this story happen? What was the chicken and what was the egg?
So we had the chicken and the egg and I think the farmer all at the table at the same time. The goal was, be aware of, look at it from all angles, look at it very much from a creativity standpoint, look at it from the original brand, brief, look at it as how could we reimagine that brief. And again, if you've got a room full of people who are creating ideas, make sure that they know what tools are in their toolbox. And so the part of the process I just described was really just about toolbox building. When we actually went and started concepting, we really looked at things creatively. We looked at what were the stories we wanted to tell, and then we immediately knew what types of tools we had available to us to do that sort of thing.
Great. And so you mentioned having all the people in the rooms, which leads me to my next question. Who worked on the project? What kind of roles? How big was the team? Can you give us a sense of just who all was involved and what they did?
Sure. The project is one. It's an experiment from Google, and we were essentially engaged Grow and another agency called Johannes Leonardo. Grow was the lead digital agency. Johannes Leonardo was the lead creative agency, and then we worked with the original creative or art directors on the project to bring them into the room. In a lot of ways, it sort of became a microcosm of what is going on right now in the industry, that you have agencies, that you have production partners, that you have brands. You try to figure out when you get them in the room, and there's an increasing trend towards getting everyone in the room at the same time, and that was certainly the model that we had. Everyone was in the room. And so to answer your question, we had a number of sort of creatives, whether those would be traditional creatives, art directors, copywriters, people you might classify as creative technologists, and on to full-on developers who just sort of understood some of the technologies. And critical to the whole process was the idea of a visionary creative director who could guide us through what the thinking was behind that specific insight and how we could bring that to life today.
Great, and that actually is I think leads to an interesting question, because I think commonly when you have people that really get the technology, get the what can be done with it, and come up with the creative ideas, if the client or if other folks in the agency, depending on your situation, aren't that comfortable with the technology, it can be a little bit of a hurdle to try to get them to understand it, back it, get excited about it. So how did you go about that? Did you have any issues with, especially with working with people who built this campaign decades ago? How did you approach teaching them about the technology, getting them excited about that, or were they just naturally gung-ho about it?
I would say they were more sort of, because a lot of them were kind of coming into it learning so much new stuff. They felt like we were the teachers in that regard. They were going to teach us about the brand. They were going to teach us about their insight. We were going to show them what was possible creatively and technologically today. I think the push-pull that happened in the process is more, again, synonymous of what happens right now, where you have to try to figure out what is the right balance of the idea, what's the right balance of the technology, and show people that, for example, to tell a story with just video and just to put a video in that space doesn't take advantage of all of the things that can make it relevant to its audiences, that can make people more likely to engage with it, to make people stick with it longer, and so forth. And so once people understand that, that's probably the way to get past those hurdles. And we had them, very much so. There was a constant push-pull, and I think a healthy one, of creative and technology input.
Great, and I think that tension can be very helpful, and in some places it can be more difficult. So it sounds like you guys had a really good experience with that, which is awesome, and obviously the output was amazing. What was the biggest hang-up you guys came across as you were trying to put this thing together? Be it a technological one or a cultural issue with the team, or what was the one thing that you would say was like that was the real dark night of the soul for this project, and how did you get past it?
Oh gosh. No, I'm not going to go too deep into the.
You don't have to name names, but
the closet of skeletons. But I mean, there were a lot of moving parts in that campaign. We are trying to. We're looking at the brand's most iconic work that has defined that brand. Some of their most famous and revered advertising, and we couldn't screw that up. Right. So we knew sort of right away that was something not to touch. Our project was also about making sure that Google's technology was used in its most optimum way to serve as an example of how to do these sort of things. And so, again, there's trying to find the right balance of all of those things. There's individual components that were every project presented its own hangups. With Alka-Seltzer, we did this as both a desktop execution and a mobile execution, and so trying to find a way to do all of the very dynamic things that we're doing in desktop and do them in mobile without doubling the work. A lot of the stuff that we did in desktop can't be done in mobile in the same way, and so right. Thinking about both of those platforms at the same time so we only solve the problem once.
Right, and I think that's actually a huge concern for anyone doing this kind of really, really deep digital creative work, I think, right now, just across any platform, is that connection between desktop and mobile, and how do you make that, exactly like you said, so it's not double the work. And I think sometimes it's almost impossible to do that. Obviously, the technology hopefully is moving in the direction where it's
Sure.
Easier and easier, but we've heard that pain point from everyone on the past couple days here, actually.
Yeah.
So I am going to ask you one final question, and then I'm going to toss it over to Ryan to see if he has any questions for you, or if you have any comments for him. But if you were going to give people who want to do something similar to what you did, obviously different ideas, but something in the direction of the work that you guys did with Alka-Seltzer, which has so many moving pieces, so many APIs feeding into it, so many different elements. If you had one piece of advice to give them before they set out on this very large task, what would that be?
There is a level of that the Google platform is built to do. The platform is built to know about its audience. It's built to know about location. There's some very simple signals that are very easy to bring into your creative and very relevant for both creative and media placement. And those things everyone can and should be doing. I don't think people are doing those nearly enough. If you want to go so far as to find the limits of those things, to explore some of the things that are really kind of finite details of that, my advice would be bring a smart developer in the room and pair up with Google. Google for us, and not just because we worked with them on the project. With you guys project. We've worked with you guys on a number of campaigns just for agencies, and we always find a technical correspondent to work with and make sure we're navigating all those waters properly.
And we didn't even ask him to say that, by the way, at all. So,
okay, so
yeah.
I wasn't sure you'd want me to say that. So.
Well, I'm fine with that. Our developer relations folks might be panicking a little bit, but yeah, no, that's a great piece of advice. Is wherever you can partner up, and your point is really well taken. That there's just a lot of very simple triggers you can use in these kinds of media, in these kinds of units that to your point exactly don't get used very often, and you can do a lot of very fun, narrative, engaging stuff with that. Ryan, any questions or comments for Drew?
No, actually, sort of leading off what he just said, I'm curious, now that creatives are starting, and this is sort of new in my opinion. I came from the creative agency 4 or 5 years ago, and we weren't really thinking about data signals, right? We weren't thinking about how I can tie weather like feed API, which Drew has done really well in that example, into the creative. And I think now that, with programmatic buying and the way the industry is moving, was it difficult for you guys to either find those resources or identify what triggers you can use? Can we as Google and DoubleClick be doing a better job having creatives understand sort of what opportunities there are or there is right now with data?
As I'm engaged in a project right now that is it's got some similar ideas. What can we do? What are the latest things? I really have found that a lot of the documentation, a lot of the sales materials are hugely accurate. Only the very minute details of some of the things are missing. So, and those things are always a quick email away. So no, I think people have the tools that they need to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, cool. I think it's just you guys and other creative agencies leveraging it and having these examples to share where other creative agencies will start to understand that.
And to your point, how and where to introduce it into the conversation, where in the process does it come up with. If you look at Alka-Seltzer, the whole idea was, let's use those signals that are usually used for very simple things. We know the weather, and so we'll serve you a hot coffee or a cold coffee or an iced coffee, but we could use that for a creative platform. And so then all of a sudden, people who are used to, say, writing, in Alka-Seltzer's example, a sitcom script, need to understand cues that are available to them, and how do you get those in there in the right place, and again, just sort of a back and forth process.
Yeah, cool. If anyone hasn't seen it, who's watching, go to Project Rebrief. And actually, I watched the Alka-Seltzer ad many times, and Drew, I just told you, there's a segment where it actually tied into the weather API, pulled my Los Angeles weather, and brought that into the ad unit. And I used to be a developer. I can see how that's done. But what was really cool is it was on the TV set, and you guys had a little shimmer effect to it.
Right.
So you sort of took it to the next level. So I thought overall the project was great. And thanks for joining. I'll pass it back over to Brian.
Absolutely, thank you.
Well, thank you, Drew. And for those of you, again, on the Hangout, if you have questions for Grow and about this particular unit, I'll go ahead and throw them on the moderator. And Drew, if you'll hang out with us for another couple of minutes, we'll switch over now and talk with the fine folks at Spinnaker. Everyone's still there?
Yes.
There they are. All right, we have a party going on over across the pond. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to show the SKYFALL example. Super fun. Let's go ahead and play the video. Then we'll jump back to you guys, do a quick round of intros, and jump to some questions. Super cool stuff. Looks pretty complicated, so I've got some questions for you guys on how that all actually was done. But let's start with the same question that I asked Drew. So when you got this as a client, and when you were thinking, what do we want to do with this? How in the world did you come up with that specific idea? Because that's a pretty, like I say, it's a pretty complicated, interactive, environmental thing. It's involving multiple devices. It's a game. It's social. What was the idea process like? Who was involved in that, and how did you guys come up with this?
Well, in terms of actually the inspiration for the actual game, it was actually 2 years in the making, and then the one day, me and my creative partner, we were talking about certain aspects of the film, and one of the important bits they were documenting was this motorbike scene that everyone was really excited about. And we thought, what can we do to actually engage our audience using this motorbike scene? Because it'd be really cool to actually have, drive a motorbike online or on a banner ad. And from there on, we just we experimented with different stuff, and then we sort of discovered the DoubleClick technology, the Channel Connect, which we had used before, and we thought we'd just maybe experiment with it.
So the idea, you knew very early on that you wanted to do something game-like using the motorbike scene, and then you went and explored the technologies that were available and found the one that fit. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate to some extent. With Skyfall and Bond, a lot of the assets and a lot of the film is kept secret, as you're probably aware, and the creative guys had the challenge of not actually knowing what was going to be the concept at the time. So we had been working on Skyfall for about 2 years, so we knew that it was going to be big. But the actual masthead, we didn't actually know until about a month, 6 weeks before we saw the media plan, and that's really the timeline that we were working towards. So the guys came up with the creative concepts. My and Alice's job to sell it into the client, and then from that point, it's really about bringing all the people to the project and delivering the game.
So
we actually came up with 3 concepts, and this one was actually the craziest one, and we didn't think it would actually run. And then when the client chose it, we said, "Oh shit, we have to build it."
Yeah, did I hear that right? Did you just say you had 4 to 6 weeks to put that together?
Yeah.
About that, yeah.
Let's talk about that. So, I mean, we hear about tight deadlines, I mean, that's part of agency life is that's just going to happen to you. But that seems unbelievable to me. So how did you guys pull that together that quickly? Did you have you mentioned you've used it before. Did you guys just have in-house experience that made it a lot quicker? Who all piled on and make sure that happened? Can you talk about that insane deadline?
Yeah, so I mean, it's something that we're quite used to working with film, because often the assets don't get signed off until the very last minute. So it's kind of something that we're used to, although it's painful. So we did a similar experience for Spider-Man back in July, which was a swipe to shoot game. So we kind of had an idea of the technology, but we knew that for Bond we wanted to make it slicker, more exciting, really kind of engage the younger audience, which was something that Sony were really keen to do. So once the concept was signed off and we kind of all caught our breath, we got Coco involved because they have the gaming knowledge, which we don't have in-house, and we knew we were going to need to work with some sort of expert people to make it all come together so quickly. So that's when Stuart and his team got involved.
Right.
Yeah, so from our side of things, the usual deadline for most games tends to be around about 4 to 6 weeks, and to be truthful, this game engine that they proposed to us, it's something that we'd kind of done before in a previous advert game that we'd created. So that was all pretty cool. Obviously, the main aspect and the main complication that really kind of pushed the boundary out was the dual screen technology, the fact that you could actually use the mobile phone as the controller, and obviously the fact that it's actually being played inside a YouTube masthead. So with that together, that really did kind of push the boat out. And obviously, whilst we're used to tight deadlines like 4 to 6 weeks, that additional aspect, it was quite a tricky and quite a daunting task to begin with, but it all kind of came together. And I think by having the experience in the game engine that we'd already created in the past certainly helped us to actually overcome the initial problems that we perhaps faced with the controller.
Okay, yeah, and that's absolutely fantastic, the fact that you can use the phone to play with it. I hope that you guys had a lot of internal experimentation as you were building it and had some fun with that. It's just a really, really cool use of the device. And to what we were saying earlier, it's very important, I think, in a lot of cases to have something that's both desktop and mobile. This is a really unique way to combine those literally at the same time. So super cool. Let me ask this, and just to go around the table and all that, who was the team that was on it? What kind of roles were the people? Because this is such like a unique project. What kind of people were pulled in order to work on this? What types of roles?
Okay, so I'm the innovations planner, and my role really is to make sure that I'm pushing the client in the right direction in digital and innovation. So with Alice and the creative guys, we work as a team to try and sell that creative and concept into the client now. As you can see, with something like this, it takes a leap of faith from the client to do this. Now, luckily, we've mentioned that we did this for Spider-Man. So we have a very fortunate sector and industry that we work in within film, where they're able to make those kind of leaps of faith. And also with SKYFALL being such a high-profile film and a franchise, and the whole 50th anniversary thing, the idea that we had to come up with had to be completely slick and on brand with SKYFALL. So John and Chris at the creative team, they've been working on Sony for about 8 years. Alice has also been working on Sony for quite some time. So we all know Sony quite well. So as a project team, we're quite used to Sony. People like Stuart and Coco, they're gaming experts, and we knew straight away that we needed somebody that can deliver that gamification, because we don't have that in house.
Yeah, so from our team, we actually helped with the development side of things. So we have a group of developers in-house that we utilise. We also helped with some of the actual animation side of things. While Spinnaker were responsible primarily for the project planning and the creative, we were kind of responsible more for the actual development of the actual campaign. So yeah.
So a lot of experienced folks in the room, it sounds like. It sounds like everyone really knew what they were doing, has a history with doing stuff like this in their own individual roles. So that probably I imagine that had to help a lot. So interesting team, interesting project. And I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked you, which is, what was the one biggest issue you guys ended up confronting? Be it something with the client, be it a technical issue, team concern. What was the one thing that made you all very nervous that you came through on, and how did you do it?
File size.
Yeah, I think when we we kind of got together with the guys at DoubleClick very early on, and when we kind of presented the scamps, they kind of said, I don't think you're going to be able to do this within file size. And so we kind of went back to the drawing board, and we kind of contemplated doing a 2D version, kind of a bird's eye view type version, but we kind of no one kind of wanted to let it go, and so we kind of pushed on, and thanks to the amazing work that Coco did, we were able to make an amazing game, but within file size, which I think we're all really happy with.
I'm not going to deny it. It certainly was a very big challenge. I mean, most of our games tend to come around about 3 to 4 megs. So to try and get a game of this size with the kind of innovation that was involved at kind of around the 1.5 megs file size was certainly a challenge. And especially because it needed to look really slick. I mean, at the end of the day, it was James Bond, so we had to make sure that we retain that slickness that you'd expect from a James Bond game, and trying to get that underneath the file size. And retain make the game actually playable. Yeah, it was a challenge, but I mean, it was one that we managed to overcome through quite careful planning. It wasn't without its pitfalls, as we were quite over towards the end, but we managed to get it under in the end outcome.
All right, so I'm going to actually pass over to Ryan. Ryan, any questions for these guys on this execution?
Yeah, I'm just curious, I feel like QR codes have been given somewhat of a bad rap in the industry, potentially because people have been honestly using them incorrectly, or at least in marketing incorrectly. So I'm wondering, when you brought this, I guess the initial one was for Spider-Man, when you brought it to Sony, were there any sort of naysayers in the room saying, are you guys crazy? Who scans a QR code?
Yes, they were, in fact. I mean, we've, as a creative team, we've been trying to get QR codes into many things. I mean, we'll try anything, really. But I think this is the very first time we felt quite strongly that it worked quite well. It wasn't redundant. I mean, most QR codes are redundant. I mean, we've seen some in the tube, and there's no reception in the tube. And we felt that for the very first time we could actually use it as a means to connect the phone, because there was no other way, and it would be quite easy, simple, and intuitive, rather than getting people to punch in a very long URL, which we do offer the opportunity for people to do that if they typing out a long URL. But
well, on top of that as well, I think we were quite familiar with quite a youthful audience. They know what QR code is. They know how to react to it. They're quite familiar with that language, so they can just
I think it's also about reducing the barriers to entry, so getting people to the game as quick as possible, and QR codes seem the most obvious way to do that.
Yeah, cool. And without going into performance, right, because that's proprietary of Sony and Media. But would you say you had what you expected in terms of sort of gameplays, or at least engagements in the QR code, or more or less?
Yeah, I would say, they're definitely happy with the results of the placement as a unit and with the gameplays, and then people who went back to play it again and again and again. So yeah, everyone was definitely happy with the results.
Cool.
Even James Bond was happy.
Nice.
Excellent.
Cool. That's all I had. I know. I'm pretty sure we have your guys' Spider-Man example in our Rich Media Gallery. richmediagallery.com. I'm going to try my own lower third right here and see if this works.
This is how we roll at Google. We're very high tech.
Right. I don't think you can click on it. It's not that interactive. But regardless, there's other Channel Connect examples in there, so check them out, everybody. Good stuff.
Thanks, man.
All right, so I'm gonna I'll wrap up with you guys before we see if there are questions. With again, the same question that I asked Drew, which is, given all that you learned from this very complex, very short time frame, kind of intense and high-profile campaign, if someone was trying to do something similar, they wanted to do gamification, they wanted to use mobile phones, something in the general direction that you guys pioneered here, what would be your one piece of advice to them?
I would say get the technology working first before you start applying the creative look and feel. And also partner up, and it was mentioned on the previous call, but partner up extremely quickly with DoubleClick and Google, and open all communication channels and make sure everybody knows what you're trying to achieve and what the output is and what the deliverable is.
What the deadline is.
And the deadline is.
And basically, don't give up. Just if you think it's going to work in your mind, just push for it.
Push through. Okay, know your technology first, though. Good pieces of advice. All right, so we just have a couple of questions from the folks that are listening in, and the first is, and we can ask actually both groups here. And Drew, are you still hanging out with us?
Still here.
Excellent. So we'll start with you, and then we'll jump over to our Spinnaker friends. But the question first from Dave in London is, what were the metrics? Were you guys looking at clicks, hits, engagement? Because these units are very different from your standard display ad unit. What was actually being measured, or what meant success?
Yeah, it's a weird question to answer for this because ours was an experiment to show advertisers. The ads didn't actually run in media; they ran for Google. The metric, though, is whether we could get people to engage, whether we could capture all of the functionalities that are available to us, and do so in a way that that reimagined that ad and did it justice. I mean, again, with advertising at that level, we were going to be scrutinized very, very heavily. And so if we put too much technology into it, or didn't really push the idea to a new place, then we were certainly going to be scrutinized.
Gotcha. And for SKYFALL, what were you guys looking at as being, you mentioned people coming back to the game again and again, posting their scores. What were you guys looking for as saying this was a successful engagement with this unit?
So it's really how long you spend on the page and the duration. And also we had some social elements to there, so it's about sharing and getting everyone to come not only to the masthead, but to keep them there. So that was really our main KPI.
Okay. And and that's an interesting use of those types of ad units, and I think really exciting way to do that, rather than a simple, we just want to accumulate the maximum number of clicks. Very different way of measuring and looking at, how are people engaging with this. So our second question, and we'll still hang out with you guys, Spinnaker, then we'll flip back to Drew at Grow, is what is your advice for balancing the client and the creative? And using DoubleClick Rich Media specifically. So how do you balance, those two things? That's from Jill in Denver. So
I think we're very fortunate that our client also really wants to push for new technology. So we often, when we know we've got a particular film coming out, we'll go in and speak to people at DoubleClick early before we even know kind of what's on the media plan, so we can look at what new ideas are out there, work with them, kind of put those ideas forward to the client. But yeah, we're lucky that he's as kind of innovative as we are in terms of new digital technology.
I think also, just to add to that, it's got to be relevant within film market. It's got to be relevant to the film. So something like the YouTube masthead, DoubleClick channel connect technology, SKYFALL is perfect for that. So it's about getting the balance right.
Gotcha.
And on our end, I would just say make sure your client is aware of what the real opportunity is. If you look at this as a resize of a website, if you look at it as a resize of a print ad, then you're not doing with the media what it's capable of doing, and you won't see any of the types of things that you really expect to get out of it. But if you know what those things are, if you know that this is a channel that does things that no other channel does, you can create creative for that and see it perform remarkably well.
That's a great point. So we will end on that, and I want to say huge thanks to Drew over at Grow and to all of our friends over at Spinnaker for joining us. You can see their work at www.creativesandbox.com, and we recommend that you guys go there and check out some of these amazing DoubleClick units and the things that they've done. They go way beyond a unit in that term. They're full-blown experiences. So please go check them out. And for those of you that will join us tomorrow, same time, same channel, we'll be talking about Google Plus API. So hopefully I will see you there. And thanks so much to both agencies for coming on board and chatting with us, and have a great afternoon.